People with narcissistic personality disorder don't have healthy identity mechanisms. Narcissism forms because the normal psychosocial development process is interrupted by some type of trauma. As a result, the child fails to develop a sense of autonomy and instead is filled with shame and self-doubt. This eventually leads to the failure to develop a healthy sense of self. That's why they need a scapegoat in their lives. They need someone they can blame for everything that goes wrong. Scapegoats have a mix of characteristics, many of which can help them build resilience against the emotional abuse they suffer at the hands of a narcissist. Other characteristics, however, can cause them lifelong problems, such as addiction and low self-esteem. Let's discover the 17 telltale signs you're a narcissist scapegoat. Number 1. Loving caretaker. A scapegoat is often someone who does provide emotional or physical caretaking of a parental figure. They often take on multiple responsibilities in the family, such as cleaning, cooking, and babysitting. The problem with their caretaking is that a narcissist will never be satisfied. Thus, they blame them for not being able to fully satisfy their needs. This often results in burnout, anxiety, and poor self-care habits. Constantly shouldering the blame can ultimately result in the scapegoat leaving home at an early age to escape the abuse and problems with substance abuse. Number 2. Empathetic and sensitive to inner turmoil. Scapegoats are often very empathetic. In fact, some are empaths. They can see and even feel the emotions of others, and they want to help. But that kindness just puts them in the crosshairs of the narcissist. The narcissist fears intimacy and doesn't want someone to be able to get that close to their true self. Their fear of exposure causes them to lash out at anyone trying to help, and that is often the scapegoat in their life. Number 3. Efficient problem solver. Scapegoats also are often excellent problem solvers. They have developed the skills to navigate the world not only without support, but in fact, with resistance and constant attacks. They try to use their problem-solving abilities to help resolve the dysfunction they see in their own family. Unfortunately, that's in direct opposition to what the narcissist wants. Number 4. Fiercely protective. Scapegoats often become the protector in the family. They defend their other parent and siblings from the narcissist's emotional and sometimes physical abuse. They know what it's like to be scapegoated, and they try to prevent that from happening to loved ones. They may confront abusers directly, and later in life, they often turn into fierce advocates for abuse victims. Of course, they also often fail to recognize their own limits and vulnerability. Number 5. Highly sensitive. Scapegoats are typically highly sensitive individuals who care deeply for the people in their life. They develop more sensitivity as the narcissist continuously abuses them. Because of the abuse they endure, they usually become very sensitive to loud noises and other environmental stimuli. Number 6. Brazen Truth-Teller. More than anyone else in the narcissist's realm, the scapegoat is a truth-teller. They call out the abuse they see, and it is that characteristic that often catches the attention of the narcissistic abuser. The narcissist can't allow the scapegoat to continue telling the truth about them, or they might expose the narcissist's flawed true self. To stop them, they will begin a campaign of scapegoating to make them seem less credible. Number 7. Internalizes blame. Another unfortunate characteristic of the scapegoat is that they tend to internalize blame. They have spent their lifetime being blamed by an abusive narcissist for everything imaginable. They can't help but internalize the blame. This often results in problems with substance abuse and other self-destructive behaviors. They also frequently leave home at an early age, which makes them much more likely to engage in risky behaviors. Number 8. Reacts emotionally. Another typical characteristic of a scapegoat is that they tend to react emotionally to anything that happens. They feel a great deal of pressure because they are constantly being blamed for everything that goes wrong. That causes them to lash out emotionally, sometimes even though the reason is minor. It becomes a habit. They react emotionally instead of acting effectively. Number 9. Rebellious and Defiant. I know this is what happened in my case. I became very defensive, and then I thought that if my mother was going to blame me anyway, I should just go ahead and do the bad thing she thought I did anyway. I also began to push back on everything she wanted me to do or wanted from me. It got to the point that if she said something was black, I would say it was white, just to contradict her. This rebellious streak is what can lead some scapegoats to run away from home at an early age or begin engaging in other types of self-destructive behavior. It can lead them down a very dark road. Number 10. Experiences mental or emotional collapses. All of the pressure a scapegoat experiences can lead to a mental or emotional collapse. They become unable to function out of fear that they might make a mistake. This might seem extreme, but it's a distinct possibility when an individual is being blamed for everything that goes wrong. They want to please the people around them, who doesn't, and as such, they become very sensitive to criticism. When they're harshly criticized by a narcissistic abuser, they can easily suffer a mental or emotional collapse. They can simply shut down to avoid any further blame or criticism. Number 11. Codependent people pleaser. Scapegoats naturally become people pleasers. They are trying to avoid the criticism to which they have become accustomed. To keep the peace, they will frequently ignore their own needs in order to please their narcissistic abuser. Unfortunately, they'll never be able to do it well enough, often enough, or with enough love to please a narcissist. It's just not possible, and as a result, putting their own needs on hold becomes a lifelong habit instead of a temporary solution. When they reach adulthood, they often seek out the same type of abuser for romantic partners, and they continue the pattern of codependency. Number 12. Have poor coping mechanisms. Many of the characteristics of a scapegoat are due to the fact that they have poor coping mechanisms. They don't know how to process the emotional stress they are almost constantly experiencing from a narcissistic abuser. They internalize the blame and often turn their emotional distress over that fact inward as well. They engage in self-destructive behaviors such as substances to numb their confusing feelings. It's completely understandable given the abuse they've suffered, but there is a better way. They just need a little help finding that way out of the darkness. Number 13. Feel different in some way. Given that they are told how different they are, how broken, how flawed, how wrong, and how insufficient, it's no surprise that scapegoats feel different in some way. They are made to feel different, and not in a good way. How could they not feel different? They are often labeled as the black sheep of the family. They are put, quite purposefully, in the role of someone who is different.
Number 14. Experience toxic shame. Given the nature of the narcissistic abuse they endure, it's easy to see how a scapegoat would incorporate toxic shame into their sense of identity. It's one of the most damaging characteristics they develop as a result of their abuse. What's more, toxic shame can be intergenerational. A scapegoat can pass that same sense of shame onto their children.
Number 15. Difficulty with regulating their emotions. All of these characteristics lead to problems regulating their emotions. The emotional landscape of the scapegoat is a veritable roller coaster ride of unpredictability. Since they are blamed for everything that goes wrong in a family, they never know what's coming their way next. That makes it very difficult to regulate their emotions effectively. Number 16. Feel victimized. It's not without good reason that a scapegoat might adopt a sense of victimization. They are being victimized by a narcissistic abuser. They are being told they are responsible for all the bad that happens in their world, and yet there is no logical connection to them. They don't even need to do something to get the blame for it when it goes wrong. And number 17. Desperately want justice. Scapegoats are all seeking justice. They want to be believed when they tell the truth, and they want to be appreciated for that as well. They also want to make their abuser stop. They try desperately to explain the situation, only to find that no one is really interested in their explanation. They feel cheated as a result of never getting the justice they desire. In the end, narcissistic abuse leaves a disastrous legacy for all who experience it. Narcissists need a scapegoat they can blame for anything and everything. They can't shoulder the blame for any mistake they make, or it will topple their carefully constructed house of cards. They use every trick in the book to make a scapegoat accept blame and stop their truth-telling. This includes using their own emotions against them. To help with that, I've created a 5-step roadmap to heal emotional triggers. This free, handy guide will help you identify, diffuse, and even heal your emotional triggers. If you can do that, you can stop a narcissist in their tracks. If you would like a copy, just click on the link below the video and I'll send it directly to your inbox. Thanks for watching.